Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EFMD Global Career Fairs powered by Hired. We are so glad you are here today with us and welcome to this webinar. This webinar consulting versus industrial career and how to secure your first job. I'm Bahar from Hired and I will be co-hosting this session with you. Before jumping into the webinar, Before jumping into this webinar, I would like to quickly introduce you Hired and why we are here and how we can support your career journey. Hired is a global care service hub to connect students like you with exciting career opportunities around the world. We partner with international employers and the universities to provide and help you with the discover internships, graduate programs, full-time jobs, and the career events just like this, what is happening today. So for this webinar, we are so lucky to have Øyvind Torpp, Executive Vice President for the investment at Orkla, with us. Before joining Orkla executive management team, Mr. Torpp spent more than 20 years at Boston Consulting Group, where he was a partner for 15 years. Among other things, of course, he also headed BCG Norway from 2014 to 2018. So in other words, what we can say, Mr. Torpp has a super relevant background for today's topic. And that's why we are so fortunate to have him. And he will be sharing his insights and the perspectives on consulting versus industrial career, along with some tips and reflections too on how you can land your very first job. So let's get started. Mr. Torpp, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bahar, and great to be with you today. And as I said, I spent 23 years in consulting with Boston Consulting Group, and then I decided to move to the industry or to a industrial investment company, where I now spent the last 3 years. So the plan is to share some perspectives on consulting and also the reflections on consulting versus industry, and finally I'll also then share some thoughts on the recruitment process seen from the consulting perspective. And just please make sure to ask questions and make this as interactive as possible. Then it will be a better session.
Great that you mentioned, Øyvind. I was about to asking the audience that this is supposed to be a very casual and interactive session. So please feel free to ask your questions. So let's get started and let's maybe start from the beginning. So why did you actually decided to join consulting?
Yes. So I have an engineering background, and when I completed my studies, I basically didn't know what kind of career I wanted. So I checked a lot of different opportunities, but I found it very difficult to figure out exactly the long-term perspective. And then consulting was a natural selection in the sense that it provides a lot of career flexibility. So you don't close any doors, but you open a lot of doors. The opportunity to build the network, get to know a lot of people, and experience different settings, industries, geographies, and also learn a lot and understand what type of work you really enjoy. For me, it was I wanted to find an environment with a lot of personal growth opportunities. So I thought consulting was a good choice from that perspective. And then problem solving has always been very important to me, and that is also a fantastic place joining consulting to learn that even better.
Wow, from the engineering background to the consultancy, and the consultancy is value shops that we definitely use your knowledge to, provide the value to the customers. So, but once you were in, what surprised you the most about working in consulting?
Yeah. So when I joined, my thought was to spend maybe 2 or 3 years. I hope to survive the first 6 months, and then in the end, as mentioned, it became much longer. But I would say number one, the learning curve and the personal development was much steeper than what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
And also when I joined consulting, you had the I at least I had this idea that the clients will come with very clear problems, and then go to the consultant companies and ask, can you kind of support us on this one? That is really the case, and a lot of the work we do, or the work I did, was also to frame the problems and spar and discuss with the clients exactly what are the issues that we are facing here.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a much stronger relationship cooperation between consultants and the clients compared to what I expected. And then it was also much more intense, and intense from a workload perspective, from a travel perspective, always on perspective, and then maybe finally, the whole feedback system. So you get feedback, yeah, basically every day you get feedbacks on all the cases you're doing. You get regular feedback in terms of promotions and bonus and all of that. So the feedback cycle, and that can obviously be a bit painful from time to time, but for sure it makes sure that you develop, and so it's in the end a very good thing.
Yeah, as I can imagine that, because you will be getting the client from the different industries, and you need to keep update your skill set in order to create the value for the customer. So, what would you say are the unique skills you developed in consulting?
Yeah. And it's a fairly long list, and I will not go through everything. But for me, there is something very important around time management, and maybe it's also due to the fact that the clients pay for every hour that we basically spend. So you better spend the time in the best possible way. So the way with, yeah, setting up the projects and making sure that you always focus on the most important topics, and with this limited time, always prioritize. So that is super important. Other topics, the relationship with both internally and the project team, but also with the clients, and then with a lot of clients, different levels in the organization. So to understand how to communicate in a good way and interact with a lot of people in complex settings is very important. And then it's more like yeah, data analysis, problem solving. You develop a lot of skills in that direction, and also around maybe finally on the storylining and the way to communicate complex topics, issues in a fairly simplistic way, and focus on the key issues. I would say that that's at least important skills that you develop in consulting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is definitely that you have those skill set in order to develop in the consulting. But I know that you work like over 20 years in consulting, and from your perspective, what has changed the most in consulting over the last 20 to 25 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I joined, so the slogan that BCG had at the time was, "When you're good at something, it's time to learn something new," and that was the starting point when I joined consulting. Now, 25 years later, it's a very different level industry sector functional expertise that sits in the consulting industry. And it both means that the consulting companies are much better. They understand the issues at hand in a much better way. But it also might be that you don't have to think through the fundamentals in the same way as we had to do in the past, when
Mm-hmm.
basically a new project, a new setting was quite new, and we had to start from scratch. And then there's also a lot of other changes, AI, the digital system support obviously means that the way of operating now is very, very different. I would say that this whole work-life balance topic is much more important now. When I joined it was not that important. And also the type of profiles that the consultancy companies are recruiting at the moment, much more diverse and interesting compared to what it was back in the days. And maybe finally, going back, the focus was very much on problem solving and working in PowerPoints. Now it's much more about execution and also develop solutions together with the clients and see that things are being implemented. So it's also much more operational compared to what it used to be.
I like how you actually summarize it very, very easy way, because I mean, nothing is permanent, only the change is permanent in this world. And it is applicable for both life as well as businesses, industries, or even the business schools. That students who is the audience today, there are schools changing the programs different because everything is changing. So they have to update and keep up for this world speed, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, it is.
a lot
It's
of changes
really
also coming. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And the AI, and imagine
Yes.
just 2 years ago where we were, and now today where we are.
Yes.
So, and looking back, if I ask you, would you choose consulting again if you were starting today?
Yes. Yeah, the
Is
simple
that any
answer
doubt?
is yes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's a fantastic way to start your career, and I've been through it, the arguments, but for me it's been very, very important. I think it's a very good way to start. It opens all these different doors, and the downside side is very limited, if they're at all. So for me, I would absolutely recommend that as a start. And then the question how long to stay in consulting is maybe a bit more tricky, and obviously down to personal preferences, long-term career perspectives, and all of that. But for a few years, I would say that it's a very good opportunity for people to join consulting.
Amazing. Okay, I think we took good amount of time about the consulting, and we know that let's shift our gear now, talking from your move from consulting into industry. So that kind of career, is something many people consider, and of course, and so I'm curious to hear what that was like for you. Like, what make you decide to leave consulting to move into industry?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. So when I decided to leave, I was 46 years old, and I've spent 23 years in consulting, so it was half my life. And it was also approximately half what you can expect of a working career. So I asked myself the question: would I like to do consulting for my whole career and a significant part of my life, or would I also like to experience something different? And even though I learned a lot in consulting, there's also a lot of things you not learn when you are in consulting, and I wanted to learn a lot of new things and wanted to get exposed to a different to see different cultures and other companies, and also be much closer to the actual decision making. And in industry, at least for me, you have a bit more of control in your life, and you decide a bit more. So also from a work-life perspective, it was important for me to find even better balance.
Yeah, I understand. And so, as you were in the consulting and now you are in the industry, so what do you see as the main difference between consulting and the industry?
Yes. I would say that the most important is this topic around decision making, and as an advisor, obviously you influence, and decision making that the clients are doing is very important. But it's when you have the responsibility, it is something different. It can from time to time create a bit more stress, but at the same time, when you see real progress and value creation, the feel of accomplishment is also at a different level. So that has been very important for me, and important, and the perspective on the difference. Yeah.
So, is that what also surprised you the most about on the other side of the table?
So surprising me, maybe. So there's a few thoughts on that. So first of all, I would say that from distance, everything looks very easy. So when you get on the inside, and you're actually responsible for making the change, and you're also exposed to all things you have to handle in a busy day, all opportunities, all challenges. It's a bit more complex than when you are 100 meters away, and everything looks a bit easy. It's in consulting, when I was a consultant, it's easy to always think about the new things, so new opportunities, new growth opportunities, new system tools, AI, what have you, and discuss all these new things with the clients. In industry, it's also super important to focus on the core. So the importance of as I sometimes say, the core is the core, and you need to keep control of the core business. So that has maybe also surprised me a bit on the focus in industry compared to consulting. And then I would also say that there's, and as an external, you don't always see that, but the level of energy and passion that you find in industry is at a very high level, typically. And the importance of leadership and people, in the end, it's all about that. Writing a nice report in PowerPoint and agree what needs to happen is one thing, but to actually implement and do it in reality is something very different. I see we also get some question, and I will.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
about to say that
Yes.
we have the question from the audience. Yes, here we go for the first one. Can you see the question, or do you want me to read it out loud?
Yeah, I can see it. So if the consulting firms also view candidates from a law and IR background, I would say yes, and increasingly so. But if you look at at least where I spend most of my time, most people had either a business or an engineering background. But I think in consulting, it's much more about problem solving and analytical skills, not that important exactly what the background is. So it's much more about the skill set and the personality more than exactly what you studied.
I believe when we move to the next one, like we already talk about the consulting, we talk about the industry, and I think it's time for us to focus on something very relevant for many of our attendees, audience today, as
Yeah.
for the landing that first job. And I think there are many curious people waiting for that. From your experience, both in consulting and the industry, what advice would you give to students or recent graduates preparing for that first step?
Yeah. And for me, that is fairly straightforward. And people will talk about what's your career goals, what's the company culture, values, location, compensation, learning, growth, opportunity, a lot of different things. But for me, it all boils down to one topic, and that is who would you like to work with, and where do you learn the most? And at least my experience is that when I see how people grow, develop, learn, and progress in their careers, it's always linked to the people they work with. That's the by far most important factor. So I would encourage you all to think through what kind of people would you like to work with, where do you believe you will learn the most, and based on that you find what's the most attractive type of company, specific part of a company, and focus on that.
That's a great advice. And so we can back to again, like from your consulting experience, like what were you and your team looking for when you recruiting from universities or business schools?
Yes. And also here it's a fairly long list, and I could talk about academic performance. I could talk about business understanding, problem solving skills, interpersonal skills, communication skills, and all of these factors are very important. But at least when I was doing interviews and interviewing and still when I'm doing that, it goes back to what kind of energy level do I see, and what kind of personal drive do I see, and what has been proven. So it's much more important to actually figure out if people are developing and how they are developing in the right way, much more than exactly what kind of skills or what's your position today. So in interview settings, I would recommend to also have a strong perspective on those two elements.
Yeah, so it is like pretty much it is all about right now is that hire for attitude and train for skills.
Exactly. And as I said, and what does it mean in practice? And it goes back to, and we will come to that in terms of applications, interview settings, and what have you. But I experienced too often, and still experience too often, people sending the application. And basically, if you send the same application to BCG, to Bain, to McKinsey, to the bankers, and you don't demonstrate that you're taking a stand, that you actually try to understand what does this company stand for, why are you interested, what makes the company unique, and that uniqueness why are you interested? The energy that you show both when you write the application, but also in the interview setting, is just so important. If you have the feeling that this is someone who just sends out 20 applications and try to get a job, the feeling for the people who's actually doing the interviews are very, very different compared to the opposite. And when we see people actually being careful in their selection and a clear perspective on why they would like to work with you and your team.
That's really good advice. And it is also bring me back to the questions that do you have any specific advice for students when it comes to writing their CV as well and applications?
Yes. Again, explain why you're interested, your commitment, how you see this as part of your personal development. So make it clear exactly why you find this interesting. I think that's important. And then at least for consulting, make it very short and precise. Focus on not only the results you have at school, but also the engagement in other activities, and your interests. And yeah, I think that's the key point from my side.
That's a great advice. And I hope our audience today is listening and taking some notes. And if you have questions, please put. I see already several questions, but before we go to audience questions, I just want to ask one last question because, of course, sending the CV and writing the application letter to sending the companies is the first step. However, there are the several steps to go into the company. There is the interviews, case interviews, and so on. But what is your best advice for preparing for the case interviews specifically?
Yeah. And I think first of all, it's important to remember that at least the way I think about it is that the case interview is an opportunity to identify what the candidate, the skills that the candidate has, and not try to identify the gaps. So it should be a positive experience, and where people are trying to understand why this candidate could be a good match. Sometimes you might experience the opposite, but for me that's not the right way to think about the case interview. And it's also important, going back to what I said earlier, the case interview setting, it's an opportunity for you to show that you are good in communication, but also team development and interacting with other people. So instead of thinking, now I get this challenge and I need to solve this all by myself, think through how you can discuss, align with the people interviewing you, and making sure that the communication flows in a good way. I think it's very important to create this good dynamic in these kind of settings, and it's actual dialogue and not only you trying to solve the case. And then maybe a bit more specific, and there's a lot of books and digital courses on this. So I will not go into that, but I would say it's very important to get off on the right foot. So develop a good structure for the case interview, and make sure that you have the alignment, that this is a good structure, and work in that structure, is very important. It makes the whole discussion much better. And then yes, practicing helps here as always. Again, there's a lot of books and resources out there to that you can study. Talk to people who have been or still is in consulting industry, and try to do a couple of prep sessions if possible. But again, I think the most important, try to think about this as it's an opportunity to demonstrate what you know and your skill set. It's not the setting to identify the gaps. That's at least not the way it's intended to be.
Thank you very much, Øyvind. It was really insightful, and the structure and the practice and the practice. So
Yes.
as always, just be prepared and know what you are doing. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. And I believe I do not have any more questions. But
There
I
was-
see that we have so many questions from audience, and we can start. I can start asking you. Maybe we can start with yes. How do you measure the success of a consulting project after it is implementation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say that there's obviously a lot of different type of consulting or consulting projects, and in some situations, if you provide advice related to an acquisition, for example, obviously there's way to measure if that was a good acquisition or not. If you do a procurement project or something very functional, where it's also very tangible what you expected to deliver, it's fairly straightforward. If it's more on the strategy side, it's obviously can be a bit more tricky, and it can take many years before you actually get, or you can look at the advice versus what was the outcome and to what extent it was creating value or not. And then on top of this, you always have the client satisfaction factor that is also very important.
Thank you very much. We have already second question in the queue. How can one position oneself strongly for starting a position in consulting? What kind of internships are appreciated?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a lot of internships in consulting, and that's a great way to test if this is something that you're interested in. Also for the consultancies these days, they recruit a lot of people who have had internships. So probably more than 50% is coming through that type of activities. So that is very important. And then obviously having internships, it could be with investment banks, it could be with other type of companies. So being active from when you start studying and do a number of internships is both good because it's a platform for a potential career and a job, but it's also from a personal development and also demonstrating that you are taking this personal development and your career serious is also from that perspective very good.
Thank you so much. And I have another questions coming from the the person who has experience. So the question is, what are the main skills that consulting firms look for in experienced professionals coming from industry?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, and this is happening much more now compared to in the past, and it will probably be even more important in going forward. And as a consultant and people like me starting as an associate 22, 23 years old, it's good to complement that with people who have actually been living in or been working in the industry and living that life. So it's important for the consultants to provide even better advice, to have a diverse team, and also understand even better how the clients are thinking, acting, behaving, to make sure that they are providing the best advice possible, and also that the implementation plans, etc., are being developed in such a way with a high success rate.
Great. Thank you so much. And the next one is the job. Yeah, you can see the question as well. Yes.
Yes. I find it a bit challenging question to be precise. I mean, in consulting, obviously you need the energy drive, and that's important. There are some personal traits and capabilities being important that I've been through. But everyone is basically starting from scratch. And again, I would say it's even more important. It's not the most important is not exactly what you know the day you start. The key topic is what kind of personal development have you seen before joining, and even more important, what will happen after you join.
Right. When it has come to the next question, and I see it is not so relevant for this, but we can answer with the perspective of in consultancy, I guess. What are the first 2 to 3 steps international students should take when starting their internship research in France? And I assume here you mean as the internship in consultancy?
Yeah.
We assume that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways. So if you're interested in a career in France, obviously start or apply for a position in France could be a first step. But if you see that that's a bit challenging, then maybe start closer to home. Could be a place, and then do a transfer. So thinking about consulting companies like Bain, McKinsey, BCG, obviously with strong positions in France, there's opportunities to maybe start another place and then get an internal transfer. So that can also be one solution.
Thank you so much. And also for the students that talking about in general internship search in the France or any specific country, and of course we always suggest that if you are student, then reach out to your career service department. They have the resources and the tools to help you with, and as I even say, apply in your own country. And if you are in France, then of course apply in the France, and you can do the transfer in the other places. I think that being said, we are almost at the end, and I really thank you so much for Øyvind, and thank you for such a rich and inspiring session. It has been a pleasure having you here with us, and I believe it is not only I'm saying it, I believe also the audience has a similar voice here. And thank you so much once again for here be with us here. And for the audience, the EFM, the Global Career Fairs continues. And so be sure to check it out, the next webinars. And we are having upcoming next is the power of tests in recruitment and the decision and understanding personality from the fair side. So you can check it out. And one more time, thank you so much for Øyvind. Do you have any last advice for the students before we leave?
I think we covered the key topics, but all the best, and hopefully this has been some perspectives for your when you take your considerations forward and think about consulting versus industry. And yeah, all the best and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Take care.